Hey guys, this is Stefan Fleet. I am excited. I am more than excited to announce that I have just registered at visualdefects.com. That's visualdefects.com with one F and two, actually. They forward to each other. So why did I register this domain name? Because it's cool and nobody else did. So I figured I'd put it to good use and put some tutorials or something like that on it. So here I go. This is my inaugural visualdefects.com tutorial. I am in Wilmington, North Carolina at the morning, visual effects supervising the upcoming television show Under the Dome for CBS. And I have a little free time this Saturday, and I figured why not sit in my hotel room and make a tutorial, because that's what people do when they travel, right? So anyway, what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is distortion. And why do I want to talk about distortion? Well, I was just at NAB. The guys from the Foundry were kind enough to ask me to do a presentation at their booth on Nuke and some of the cool tools that we've created at Encore Hollywood, which is where I work. And I showed a couple custom tools, and one of them was a slightly more sophisticated heat distortion that we use. It's a little bit more than just your regular iDistort with some noise. And people seemed pretty interested in that one in particular, so I figured I'd show you guys how I built it. And in fact, I'm going to improve upon it. I noticed some flaws in it when I was showing it off to people, and so I figured I might as well build it from scratch right here, right now, and then save it, and then have a new, better version of it. I'm going to tell you guys right now that I have not rehearsed this, and I will probably make a ton of mistakes. That's part of the game of doing this, is messing up and then fixing your mistakes, and keep you keep going until it looks good. I'm gonna throw this thing up there completely unedited because I'm lazy and I don't feel like editing this video, and also I think it's more honest, and you're gonna learn a lot from my mistakes. So anyway, enough about me and this visual defects thing. Let's get into it. Oh, but before I do, let me just show you guys something really awesome. How awesome are the guys at the Foundry? I mean, not only have they created Nuke and Mari, and now they've got Modo and all this other great software, which I have a lot of, actually. Oh, and Hero. Hero is great. Hero plus Nuke together is amazing. But I'll save that for another tutorial. But check this out. When we were at NAB, they took me out for dinner one night, and we rolled around in a pink stretch limo. And there they are. Talk about some awesome dudes and dudettes right there, right? These are some good people, and I think she's drinking paper out of a champagne glass, but why not? All right, so let's get back to it. That was a nice aside. This is a still that I took when I was in Miami working on another show, and I just figured why not use a picture of Miami for heat distortion, right? Let's do it the traditional way. Let's do what most people do. I want to make some noise. We all know what noise is. And for those of you that don't know Nuke very well, I suggest you look up some other tutorials on the basics. I'm not really going to get into that. I tend to like pop-up windows, and I use the tab key a lot to bring up nodes. You can get all the same stuff in the menus over here, but you're probably not going to see me do that. So anyway, I just hit tab, and I started typing the word noise, and noise came up, and here is noise. Good old fractal noise. And if you hit play, nothing's going to happen. I am going to put this into proxy mode, only because for tutorial's sake, I want things to be a little bit faster. I am on my laptop, and it can be a little slow on my old laptop. But anyways, so here's noise, and then we're going to create something called an iDistort. You've probably seen the iDistort before, and we're going to plug this image into the iDistort, and we're going to look at it, and we're going to see absolutely nothing happening. Why is absolutely nothing happening? Well, iDistort needs something else. See, it needs these things called UV channels. See this? It has channels all up here, but then down below it's asking me for UV channels, and right now it says none. It's not there. And UV channels are pretty much your X and Y coordinates. It needs to know where you want to deform or warp or bend your pixels, how many pixels to the left, to the right, up, down, etc., etc., etc. And we do that by feeding it two channels, U and V. You could call them X and Y, but then that gets confusing, in the 3D world with X, Y, and Z. So this is, just two different letters, U and V. And we're going to create those channels out of this noise right here. And the way we're going to do that, I'm going to hit K, which is the hotkey for copy, one of my favorite nodes. I'm going to tuck that in right above the iDistort, and I'm going to plug the A side of the copy into the noise. And by default, alpha and alpha are going to copy. So you're taking the alpha channel from the noise, which looks the same as the noise, and you're copying it into the alpha channel of this chain right here. So if I hit the A key here, you're going to see that I have this noise alpha channel in my main chain right now. But that is not what we want to do at all. So I'm going to go into my copy node, and I'm going to take two channels. Let's just take, they're all the same right now in the noise. If you look at the noise, R, G, B, and A are all the same channel. So it's somewhat arbitrary at this point. But let's stick to this this sort of traditional thing, which is I'm going to take the red channel and the green channel. So the first two channels only. And I'm going to pump them into some other channels. Now I could pick anything here, to be perfectly honest. I could pick deep front and deep back. But for clarity's sake, in this tutorial, I'm going to create a new channel, and I'm going to call it Distort, right? It makes sense. So Distort, and I'll call one Distort U. You're going to have to put the dot and the U here for the copy to register it, okay? It says create new layer. Yes, absolutely. And a layer is a grouping of 4 channels in Nuke. And then for green, let's make a new one. We'll call it Distort. Yep, there we go. It didn't ask me to create a new channel because we already created the Distort channel. And U and V are I'm sorry, new layer. Distort is the layer, and U and V are the channels. I have 2 channels in the layer Distort. There's a lot of tutorials on layers and channels out there if you're interested. Anyway. All right, so now we're here. We're going to close the copy, and I'm going to hit play, and still nothing's happening. Why? Because I need to go into my iDistort, and I need to actually select that layer in my UV channels, and here it is, Distort. See, it's appeared now because I created it. And by default, it's going to pick the first 2, which happen to be U and V, so they're already selected. So it's going to use those 2 to distort this image. And again, if I hit play, still nothing's happened. Why? What's going on here? Well, right now we're not doing very much. We have told it what to use to distort it, but our scale is only a scale of 1. So let's exaggerate this and crank it way up. And now you're going to see, oh yeah, look at that. So now it has distorted this image, and if I hit play, well, it's not moving, but it is distorted, so it's a start. So let's animate this. Let's give this some motion. How are we going to do that? Well, what we need to do is we need to animate our noise, right? So I'm going to go to my noise, and I'm going to take the Z thing, and I'm going to slide it, and you're going to see that this makes my noise look like it's animating. So how do I make this happen automatically? Well, I could keyframe it. I could go to the beginning and the end, and I could drop down some keyframes, but I don't want to do that. I want to use scripting because I'm going to build a gizmo later on, and I want to be able to automate it and control it in some other special ways. So the easiest way to do this, and what I always do, is I put the cursor right in there where that 0 is in the Z, and I hit the equal sign, and it comes up with the expression tab. Now, don't be afraid of expressions in Nuke. I mean, expressions in any visual effects program, to me, are like one of the most important and overlooked things that people just don't utilize as much as they could. So, okay, let's see what's the expression. Well, we need something to control time, and the easiest way to do that in Nuke is just to type frame. And what frame does is it just pumps in the frame number on every single frame. Pretty straightforward. I'm on frame 38, so the number is 38. So now, I just hit OK. You can see, if I scroll through this thing, the Z number is going to match the frame number. And if I hit play, you're going to see some animation, right? Whoa, pretty fast, actually. Look at that. That's insane. So if we go into our iDistort here, and I hit play, it's gonna take some time to think. It's going to cache up. But you can see, yeah, it's definitely moving now. It's definitely distorting right now, right? In fact, it's completely inorganic and crazy and way too much. But you can get the idea. So how do we maybe make the frequency of transformation a little bit less? We don't necessarily want it to be every single number like this. It's too much. It's too fast. I'm going to hit equal sign again here in that Z in the noise. I'm going to divide it by a number. So dividing will lessen the frequency, if you will, of this noise transformation. And I always start with dividing by 20. It's an arbitrary number, but it's one that I found to be a good starting point for when I do these types of things. You might want to do by 50, by 100, whatever. But as you can see now, I'm hitting play. It's already going to be a lot slower and a lot smoother. So what you guys have here is an exaggerated sort of heat distortion look. This is what most people do in Nuke to create heat distortion. Now this is cranked up way too high. The UV scale is at 100. And what that happens, by the way, look at this. When I do my UV scale, everything moves down and to the right. And I'm going to explain why that happens in a second. But just take a close look at this. You see how, if we look at this palm tree here, for example, as I move this scale up and down, that tree is moving down and to the right. It's never going to move. If this is the point of origin, if this is where this picture started before being distorted, you're never going to see this tree move up and over, up above itself and to the right of itself. You're always going to see it move down, right? No matter what I do here. So that's an important point to notice. So one way you can fix that, let's say if I crank up to 100, I can use this offset, which basically brings it back to where it was. So now, notice that you're still never going to see it go up above itself, but at least we didn't push our image too far down from the get-go. So that's what offset is used for, is to bring it back. I don't actually need to use offset that much, and what I'm about to do is going to completely blow your mind and not be anything like this, so I'm not going to worry about that offset right now. But I will say that in addition to being too heavy here, it just doesn't feel like heat. I mean, it feels like an interesting effect, but you're never going to really use this effect. This is some kind of a, you know, Genart Sapphire distortion effect that, you know, I don't know, would be used in a sitcom maybe for like a dream sequence or Wayne's World or something like that. But we don't need to do that. So let's try and make this noise look a little more convincing. First off, let's make it smaller. This X and Y size here. Make it something like that. Yeah. And let's see what that does. Whoa, it's interesting, but it's too much, right? So let's make that UV scale something a little bit more manageable, maybe 20. And you're gonna see a lot less happening. And it's kind of got some tears in it. It's kind of hard edged. I mean, yeah, it's looking like something, but it's just really hard and not looking great. So what can we do? Well, we can go into our noise. We can change this thing called Lankinarity. I can't even pronounce it right, but whatever. It looks like a smoothing thing to me. Like there's more high frequency noise this way and less this way. So I'm going to smooth it out just a little bit and see what that does. It should theoretically smooth out the heat distortion just a little bit. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's looking like something. It's interesting. I wouldn't call this heat distortion. A lot of people would. I see a lot of people kind of stop here, and that's depressing. But it's, you know, it's a look. And I'm gonna divide by 2 here in my pixels. The resolution's gonna drop down, but it's gonna render a little bit faster, so you guys can get a general view quicker. Let's see. Yeah, again, you know, it's something. Maybe it's too slow, maybe it's too fast, whatever. We could sit and we could tinker with it. But one thing I can tell you that's happening for sure is that everything's still moving down and to the left, right? I mean, look at that. It's just really obvious that it's doing that. And I know as an artist, I was really frustrated because I wanted stuff to sort of like push and pull and move in every single direction and really kind of have this more organic heat distortion feel to it. So I tried doing a lot of stuff when I first, you know, started doing noise and all this crazy stuff. And one thing I started doing is realizing, well, I'm pumping in 2 channels, the red and the green, but they're identical. So it's always going to move down and to the left the same amount. What if I make 2 noises, link them together, and I see this done a lot too, but I'm going to go into noise 1 and I'm going to uncheck green, blue, and alpha. And I'm going to noise 2 and I'm going to uncheck red, blue, and alpha. So I have my green from one and my red from another, right? But they're still exactly the same noise because I just duplicated them. So I need to change it somehow. So how do I change it? Well, there's a couple things I could do. Number 1, I could go into my noise 2 and see this Z thing we did before. I'm just going to divide by 20, but I'm going to add +1, and that's going to offset everything by 1 number. So now if I look through this and I go to my RGB, oh, look at that. Now I have 2 different noises. They're offset in time. So the speed's going to be the same, the frequency is going to be the same, the size is the same, but the placement of the white and the black are different. And you can see that right there. So let's see what this looks like if we look through our iDistort. Our very intense, overly heavy iDistort. Let's see. Again, it's you know, it's kind of weird. It's not really what you'd expect it to be. I'm gonna take this way down. I'm actually gonna make both of these a little bit bigger. Make both of these like 110. They don't have to be exactly the same either. I'm gonna go to transform. I'm gonna offset them. Just something random. I'm gonna move this one plus 20, plus 10 in the Y, and that's noise 1, and then noise 2. I'm gonna move this one like minus 20, and this one like minus 15. And I'm just completely spitballing right now, guys. This is can't guarantee this is gonna look good at all. In fact, it looks pretty terrible to me. But let's see what it looks like through here. All right. Again, as it's caching, it's going to look pretty subtle. We really have to wait for some kind of a playback. It's starting to look interesting. You know what I'm going to do real quick, though? I'm going to limit this comp to 24 frames. Just 1 second so we can cache 1 nice second and then loop it. Let's do that real quick. And while that's happening, I am going to go get some water and be right back. All right, so there it is. You guys can see it's a much more subtle effect that I just dialed in. I made it larger so you're not seeing quite as high a frequency distortion. You know, sure, this could be used for something. And I could sit here and I could tinker with this this forever, but I'm not going to, because I know this is not the way I want to do it. This is the way I've seen it done a lot. This is not the way I want to do it. So what are we going to do? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to understand what an iDistort does. And I'm going to make a radial. And I'm going to show you guys exactly what an iDistort does. I'm going to make a radial and I'm going to get rid of any softness. And I'm going to kind of make it more of a circle in the middle here. Doesn't have to be perfect, but something like this. So you get the idea. And I'm going to plug that radial into this copy instead of noise. And we're going to look at this iDistort and see what's going on. And we are going to dial this scale thing up and down and realize that, wow, what a surprise. I'm moving that center circle down and to the left, right? So immediately I'm thinking there has to be some kind of an additive or multiplicative thing going on here in this iDistort. And I don't know the exact math of an iDistort. I don't know what the scaling of the numbers or all that stuff, but I'm going to take a stab and I'm going to say, if I look at this radial and I look at just the red channel, and we know that white is 1 and black is 0, forget about color for a second, just think numbers. This is a 1, and if I look at this iDistort, go back to my RGB here, and I see this UV scale and say this is a 20, I'm gonna guesstimate that that 1 in the radial is multiplying in some way times this 20, and it's moving my stuff down into the right. Maybe it's 20 pixels, something like that. It's probably 20 pixels, thereabouts. So we're multiplying the two numbers together in some way, right? That means offset is probably adding and subtracting. That's usually the way it works. So if I use this offset, look, it's bringing it back, right? Now offset's on a scale of 0 to 1, so there's some kind of a scaling or math in addition going on. It's not like I put in negative 20 and it's going to be back where it started. In fact, it looks like it's back where it started at 1. So it's kind of a scale of like 0 to 100% offset. So 0 means don't do anything to it, and 1 means bring it back to where we started. Okay, so we're moving down to the left. Why is it always down and to the left? Well, it's not. Remember, we have two channels, U and V. I can hit this 2 here and I can break it in 2 and realize what we're actually doing with this scale is we're using the two channels in this radial. We're using R and G, which are both happen to be white. They're both the same value. They're both a 1, and we're multiplying them times the same values, 20 and 20. But if I take this H and I make it 100, look, we're only going to move down. So H times G, or V, if you will, we're taking the green channel, which we turned into this V channel, and we're multiplying it times H, right? And you guessed it. If I take this W and I make it, 50, we're going to move to the left. But notice what we haven't done yet. We've never moved to the right, and we've never moved up. How are we going to do that? Well, if 0 and 0 bring us back to Arcadia, if you will, back to the center, we got to move to the left, right? So what do? Let's try a negative number, negative 100. Bingo, there it is. Let's try a negative number here. Boom, there it is, right? So now we've realized that we actually need to introduce negative numbers in order to move stuff up and to the left. So if we really want to have stuff distorting in all directions, not just 2 directions, we want to go in 4 directions, we have to use some negative values in there. So how are we going to do that? Well, we could do it right here just like I did, but I'm not going to do that because there's a better way. And I'm going to show you guys, and it gets a little mathematical. Before I do that, let's just do one more experiment with this radial. Let's let me think for a second here. Let's put in a grade. I'm just having some fun now. And let's only affect the green channel of this grade. Let's crank our iDistort up and see what happens. And let's start multiplying the green channel. Look, see? Because we're only affecting the green channel, we're moving it up and down with this multiply. So there's a lot of ways to do this. Again, I still haven't been able to take it up. You know, what happens if I multiply it by a negative number? I don't think it's going to work. No, it's not going to work because it's at 0. But there's got to be a way, right? So let's do it. Let's build this thing. Let's explain what's going on right now, right here. I'm going to make a noise. You thought we were done with noise. We're not done with noise. I'm going to call this noise main, just to be really clear. And I am going to duplicate this noise or make a new noise, doesn't matter. I'm going to call this one noise u. Okay, oh, wrong one. Cancel. Noise main. Just keep this one noise main. I haven't done anything to the noise yet, so it doesn't really matter. Duplicated it, open this one, noise u. And I would clone it, except that I'm going to change a few things. I'm going to make a few unique things in each noise, but for the most part, everything is going to be the same. So I'm going to open up both of these. And again, I'm this crazy guy that likes these tabs. I mean, I don't like that side thing where everything's listed in a list. I like it where things pop up, windows open up. So from main, which I happen to have on my right side, I'm going to copy a bunch of expressions over to noise u so that things link together. And the way you do that on a Macintosh is you hold down the command key and you grab this little square here and you drag it to the same thing over here. And now you're going to see effectively what I've done is I put in this little string of text here that says this XY size in this node is equal to this XY size. So you can see if I change this one, that one changes too, right? So I'm going to do that for a bunch of things. I'm going to do it for Z. I'm going to do it for this one, and this one, this one. Let's go up here and do it for opacity. And I'm even going to do it for octaves. And you can actually hold down the command key and grab in here too and drag in like that. I'm not sure if you can do it for a checkbox. I think you can. Look at that. I even did it for the checkbox for this Nyquist limit clip that we're never going to touch. I don't think you can do it for drop down. So yeah, that's the one thing I haven't figured out yet. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it, but I'm not going to show you guys that right now. So anyway, literally, I have cloned everything over to one side here. I'm also going to go to my color tab in case we want to change the color, which we probably won't, but just in case we do, and I'm going to make sure that's the same as well. So now that I've done that, you're going to see this green arrow, which is saying that there's some kind of an expression link here. I'm going to take my noise u and I'm going to copy it, duplicate it rather, and I'm going to change it to noise v. And the good news is, since we linked everything up, when I copied and pasted noise u to noise v, it also retained its relationship. So noise main, if you want to think about it, is the parent noise. Everything that I affect here is going to, in noise main, is going to affect noise u and noise v, and you know, I want that. So noise main is where I'm going to do all my micro adjustments and things like that. So now what are we going to do? Well, what's interesting is I need to make negative values. And how do I make negative values? Well, there's always this thing called a merge, which is, cancel that, hotkey M, and I can always take two things. Let's take this noise main and noise u, and I can subtract them, right? And you know, a minus, if you will. And a minus usually leads to some kind of negative value if you're clever about it. In this case, it's just equaling 0. Why is it equaling 0? Well, if we look at it on a per pixel level, since these two things are exactly the same thing minus the same thing equals 0. So 0.592 and 0.592 minus each other equals 0, right? So we need to offset or change this stuff somehow in order to make some negative values and subtract things. So how are we going to do that? Well, we could use a transform, and this is what I did in my original node until I realized that I was completely wrong. Let's transform this noise u, and I'll take the x and I'll make it like -15, let's say. Okay. And I'm going to look through here and look at, this is looking kind of interesting. I'm just looking at the red channel right now. I'm going to close the noise so we don't see that crosshair. But look at this. We do have some negative values in there, right? Negative 0.05, blah, 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 blah. And that's because we've moved the noise over, so now different numbers are subtracting, right, from each other. And we have some positive and we have some negative values. Of course, negative values in Nuke are just going to look like black, but you have to kind of throw that out of your mind. We're dealing with numbers here, not necessarily colors and pictures. So there is one problem to this that I picked up on, though, and I've figured out how to solve. So if I go negative 100, just to make an extreme example here, what you're going to see with the transform is that it clips the edge right here. It's moving everything to the left by 100 pixels, but it doesn't have any information to put in this 100 pixel gap right here. And I played around with it, and I hit black outside and uncheck that, and that works. And that's really cool. So that is your solve right there, because noise actually has sort of an infinite value. I'm playing, but I haven't animated the noise, so it's not going to work. But the other way to do it, instead of using this transform, and you know what I'm going to do just to be really, really clear about things? I'm only going to pump out, let's see, I'm going to take the color slider here. And again, I could totally be making mistakes. I'm going to make this one red. And I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to make this one green. And the colors, you know, are arbitrary, but it does seem to be a pretty consistent thing that we're going to use the red and the green channel. So this to me just kind of makes sense. And I'm even going to go into here and I'm going to hit hide input so that when we have it deselected, you don't see the inputs. And why am I going to do that? Because I just think it looks a little cleaner. All right, I'm going to hide the input here. And I don't want people to think, or I don't want to confuse myself and think that I need to plug in anything to these noises. I don't, actually. And this V we haven't even touched yet. So let's, okay, let's grab all these, come over here. Okay, so right in the noise, just to not have a superfluous use of transform nodes, we have a transform. It's right there. So there's really no reason to make an extra transform. So again, I'm going to, I'm back at 0 and 0, so I see nothing. I was like, wait, why am I not seeing anything? But that's because I actually have to take this. I have to say like negative 10 here, and then you're going to see it. And this transform doesn't need a black outside. It already, because you're in a noise, it already is smart enough to know that you don't want to clip those edges. So this is working for me right here, right? So that kind of works, but that's one channel because we want to do something different for the next channel. So let's take this noise V and let's do the exact same thing. I don't want to plug in the noise to each other. What I want to do is keep this one free of itself, but I do want to make, and I'm just going to copy and paste another minus, but this time, let's actually just flip it around just because honestly, I did the experimentation and I know this is the right way to do. I'm going to subtract the other way around. That is, I'm going to, you can see here I'm taking this red and I'm subtracting it, the noise U, and I'm subtracting it from the noise main. In this case, I'm going to subtract the main noise from the noise V, and that kind of inverses things a little bit. It's gonna kind of just put the noise in the right place where you want it to be to do a pushing and pulling pattern that looks very much like heat distortion. Now you can experiment with subtracting things different ways and come up with different looks. I've done all sorts of different things. I just find this to be kind of the right way to do it if you want to get a specific heat distortion. So keep that in mind. It's something to really pay attention to, the direction you subtract. Because of course, when you add things, it doesn't really matter all that much. I mean, it does in Nuke for other reasons, but just in math, remember A plus B is the same as B plus A. That is not true with subtraction. You have to remember that. So let's go back to this noise V and this noise main, and let's look at it. And again, we have black because it was subtracting the same thing from itself. So we're going to go to noise V. We're going to transform. And this time I'm going to go to the Y, and I'm going to give the Y a positive value. Let's say 15, right? All right. So let's look at these two minuses. We have two very different looking things. One kind of has an up-down pattern. It's because we transformed on the Y, and one has kind of this down pattern. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. The one with the up-down pattern is the X one, and the one with the sort of left-right pattern is the Y one. But it is the same noise. Remember, we cloned all of that information, so all three of these look the same up here. It just looks different when you start offsetting and subtracting, right? So now we have our two channels, our U and our V channel, but we need to merge them back together and put them into this copy node, right? So let's do that. All right, so I'm going to use something called a shuffle copy. If you haven't used a shuffle copy, it's great. I'm going to plug it into both of these. And I am going to say, let us make the U, the red channel, from 1, and the V, the green channel, which it already is, from 2. And we don't actually need the other 2 channels, so I'm going to turn them off. I'm going to make them black. So if we look through this and I hit R and G, we have our 2 channels, and then B is black and alpha is also black. If you look at them together, you're going to get this kind of thing. It's green and red. Again, the colors don't actually matter, but it is nice to have kind of a visual representation of what's going on. So now I've got those channels, but I'm pumping them out to the red and the green channel here, which is fine because I'm now going to take that shuffle copy and I'm going to plug it into this copy here, and you're going to see that we have, again, we said red into U, distort U, and green into distort V. So there you have it. So we've created a new distortion, and if I exaggerate my scale here, you're going to see some distortion. And what's interesting is you're going to see now, let's look at our palm tree again. You're going to see things moving in all directions. Some of these guys are moving up. Some of these guys are moving down, left, right, whatever. It's very interesting. It's not the same thing that was happening at all before. We have things moving up and down. It's like here, you kind of see something that looks like almost like a bubble, right? So it's like pushing towards us. So it's a different algorithm, and that's because we're supplying positive and negative values of noise with an offset to this iDistort, and this is really what we want. And I think this is something people have desperately wanted. But of course, if I hit play, nothing's going to happen. Why? We haven't animated our noise. So now we get into gizmo time, and now this is the second part of the tutorial, if you will. We're going to take this and we're going to turn it into a really quick and simple animated gizmo that will, a gizmo that we can animate and control some values and stuff like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something very specific. I did -10 here, but really these two should be the same numbers. The disparity between the two should be identical most times. You could arguably change them for a different look. Maybe your heat distortion has more of a vertical feel to it, but right now I just want to keep them the same. So the relationship is very similar, with the exception that one is negative and one is positive, and one is in the X and one is in the Y, right? So how can I connect these? Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to use expressions again. I'm going to, instead of making this one in noise U -15, I'm going to hit the equal sign, and I'm going to actually say, well, this actually equals noise underscore V dot translate dot Y. And I spelled translate wrong, so I need to spell it right. Translate. There it is. So now they equal the same thing, 15, except if I change this to 20, X is also going to equal 20. The only problem is it's not negative, so the easiest way to do that, times -1. Boom. There you go. So now I don't have to worry about ever changing the two of these together. Now I can just change the one in noise V to 100 to whatever I want it to be, and it's going to look the same but negative in noise U. So that's one thing down. So that's super cool. Now I also want to animate it, right? So how am I going to animate it? Well, remember we've got that Z thing in the noise, but remember in noise main, we linked everything. So if all I need to do is animate, in fact, all of these properties are going to be the same in all these in noise U and noise V. So if I go into my Z here and I go frame divided by 20, guess what? It's all going to animate. So let's see what's going on here. This is my water drinking opportunity right here. Sorry about the clickiness from my water bottle. Well, that looks pretty good to me, actually. Look at that. Let me make it bigger. It's going to have to re-render, unfortunately, but I want you guys to take a good look at it. It's pretty subtle right now. Remember, I haven't even really changed the noise or done anything funky to it yet. This is the default noise out of the bag, and it's already looking pretty good. Look at that. I think I'm barbecuing right underneath myself there, and you're seeing the waves of the propane burning up above you. But this is a much more believable heat distortion to me. I really like it. And again, I haven't even messed with any settings. So if I wanted to sit down and fidget with the settings, I could do a lot. So what I want to do now, though, is I do want to mess with the settings, but I really don't want to do it here. I want to make this a gizmo or a group and make some custom settings so I can very quickly and easily mess with those settings and really dial in the look that I want. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to do a couple of things. This reformat is just because this picture is the wrong size. So I'm going to realize that I want all of this. I don't want the reformat, I don't want the image. I want everything else. And I'm going to hit Command G, and I'm going to make a group. And it's going to ask me this question. It's going to say, where's my output? And my output should be the iDistort, right? Because that's where I want to go out from. So I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to give me all these extra sliders, which is kind of annoying because I really don't need all these inputs here. So in fact, I'm going to show you guys a trick because I can't handle these. It drives me crazy. Temporarily, I'm going to make a constant. And I am actually going to plug everything that has an input that I don't want to have an input like slider in my gizmo into this constant. And again, you're not seeing it because I turned off I did the hide input thing, but if I click on them, you can see that it's connected. And now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to select everything that I want. I'm going to hit Apple G. I'm going to make it iDistort. I'm going to hit OK. And now we are talking. See, it's only got that one stick sticking out, the number 1. And that's because it didn't automatically default to putting a bunch of inputs everywhere I had inputs. So I'm going to delete this constant now. And that's fine. I can leave these guys hanging just like this. Alrighty. And I'm going to take this input 1 and I'm going to just change it to SRC for source because I think it looks a little slicker. But this is where I want to put my source. So now if I take this guy and I drag it through here, I'm essentially doing the same thing. I'm plugging in my footage and I'm doing my distortion to it, right? And this is, I guess, a bit of a gizmo tutorial now. If you already know how to make gizmos, you're probably one step ahead of me and you don't need to watch the rest of this tutorial. But, you know, if you want to make this gizmo all the way through, stick with me. Let's do it. Okay, so I'm in here. I'm going to add a couple extra fancy features, but I'm going to do that later. I'm going to clean things up just a little bit, just so it, because I'm anal, just so it looks kind of nice, right? There we go. That looks pretty good. Nothing should be angular in Nuke. It's all about the dots, right? Okay. We need some values from here. We want to be able to control all of this stuff. And we need, well, this one's going to be a bit of an exception. The first thing, you know what? The first thing we really want to do is we want to be able to animate our speed, right? I mean, that's one of the most important things. So, in fact, what I'm going to do is I am going to double click on this group. I'm going to right click anywhere sort of in the space here. I'm going to say manage user knobs, add, and I'm going to do a floating point slider and I'm going to call this speed, label it speed as well. For now I'm going to leave it, well, the minimum should always be 1 because you can't divide by 0. And you'll see what I mean in a second. I'll make the maximum 100. Okay. And so now we have a slider that we can move between 1 and 100, and it's called speed. And I'm going to just change group 1 real quick to heater. Let's call it heater because heater's a cool name. It sounds cooler than heat distortion. And yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go back in. By the way, my tab up here, if you double click on a group and you hit this S, it brings you into the nested group. But once you do it once, you'll have a tab. So I keep constantly tabbing between my main node graph and my my group. Okay, so I've created something called speed. And speed is now a variable that I can use anywhere inside my group because it knows it's there. So if I hit my equal sign in this D again, and instead of dividing by 20, I'm going to divide by speed. You're going to see a number there, right? And that number is because it's now dividing by this number. So at 1, it's actually going to be really, really fast. And this isn't exactly what we want yet, but I'm building things through. I always forget how to do this perfectly. So yeah, it's going really fast because it's dividing the frame by 1, which means the frame. So we're back to just basically putting the word frame in there. But if I divide by 20, we're back to where we were before, frame divided by 20, right? So I kind of want to inverse this, and I have to remember how to do this because I want it to go faster, right? I want speed of 100 to be really fast, and I want speed of 1 to be like nothing, right? So let's go back in here and let's do some math. And it's been a while since I've done this, so I'm probably going to mess up a couple times. But instead of saying speed, which let's say speed right now is 1. I'm going to say 100 minus speed, right? Let's see what that does. All right, so I'm going to go into my heater node. I'm going to hold this open just so I can slide it and see what's happening. Well, that's not looking really good. 100 minus 100 is 0, which you don't want to divide by 0. That's why I'm getting infinity. It's a divide by 0 error. So I'm dividing by very sort of small numbers here, so this is not what I want to do. All right. Well, we could multiply by speed, but that's gonna, I think that's gonna go insane. Yeah, I mean, this is gonna be like incredibly fast. I get 1, it's gonna be frame, and then it's gonna go faster from there, unless we go in and we start saying like 0.5, and then we're doing it. So maybe I change my range here. And by all means, so I'm going to go actually from a scale of 0 to 1. We don't want to divide by 0, but we'll just know that that doesn't work. So now what's interesting is, if I go to 1, I'm at full speed, which is frame, which I don't think I'm ever going to want to be faster than. But if I go to like 0.2, we're back to that 20, right? So this looks good to me. I can deal with a scale of 0 to 1. It makes sense, floating point world and all. Let me see. Go really slow here. Because 0.2 times frame is 20%, right? Yeah, so... I don't really like this either. Let me pause this video for a second and figure it out, and then I'll get back to you guys. Hold on one second. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. I figured it out though, at least for my purposes. I plugged in this equation right here, frame times speed divided by 10, and so what that gives you, if I go into my main bad boy right here, with speed is at 0, you're gonna have no movement, right? No distortion, no animation, and at 1, at a speed of 1, so I'm going from a scale of 0 to 1, at a speed of 1, you're going to have 10% of the frame, and I found that to be about right, because you're never really going to want to be as fast as the frame. If I really wanted to, I could type in, like manually type in 10, and then I'm back at frame, but I found these ranges to be the best. So you don't have to worry about it too much. It's not a tutorial on expressions, but this is a good expression to put in right here. So frame number times this speed user knob, which is from a scale of 0 to 1, divided by 10 is going to give you 10% of frame times this speed variable. Okay, so what we can do now, right here in our heater group, which one day will be a gizmo, is we can slide it and we can sort of, you know, pick a number like 0.2 and see where we're at and see if we like it. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good to me, but we do want to be able to control more stuff, right? I want to be able to go in here and I want to be able to control all of these other noise properties. So the easiest way to do that in the gizmo is to go manage user knobs. Instead of saying add, because we don't need to create something new, we're going to say pick. And we're going to pick stuff out of our group and we're going to add it to our main panel here in the group. Okay, so I want to go to noise main and just kind of got to sniff around here, go into my noise settings here. And let's see, what do I want? Definitely want the X and Y size. Don't want the Z offset because we're animating that separately. Octaves. I guess we can put this clip at Nyquist. Maybe that'll give us something. The Lankinarity, gain, and gamma. Let's put those in. Boom. All right. So now they're all here. Just to make things a little clean, I'm going to put something called a divider line, and I'm going to keep hitting up until it is there, just so I've separated my speed, which is kind of my main thing that I'm going to want to use, and my X and Y size. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put this down here because X and Y size is something we're going to use a lot too, because this is going to change sort of the, I have to hit this here, the frequency of the noise. See that? It's going to greatly change how small or how big it is. And the default again looked pretty good to me, but if you needed to make it smaller for some reason, there you go. But there's still something else that we're not controlling, and that is our distortion properties in the iDistort. So again, I'm going to hit Manage User Knobs, Add. I'm sorry, not Add, Pick, my bad. iDistort. And I want a couple things out of here. I don't need the offset, but I guess I'll take it. So I'll take the UV offset and UV scale, put those at the bottom. Again, I'm going to add a divider line, and I'm going to go up here. And there you go. Those are all my main properties. There is one thing, though, that in addition to all of this, that we may want to be able to change, and that is the distance between our subtracting noise elements. So if we go back into the group, remember we're subtracting and we're using a transform here, -20 here, and plus 20 over here. It would be nice to be able to change those numbers outside of here. Maybe we want to be able to have a bigger discrepancy. And what that does is it makes it look like it's pushing and pulling more, the noise. So I'm going to make another user knob on my main group. Manage user knobs, add, and I'm going to do another floating point. Now I could put something called a 2D position knob and be able to discretely affect things, you know, the width and the height separately, but I'm going to just keep it all the same for now. You guys feel free to make this more dynamic if you want to. So I'm going to call this distance or noise distance or something. Let's call it noise dist, and let's call it or you know what? I'm just going to call it something fake and fancy. Intensity. It's not really the intensity, but whatever. And I'm going to go from 0 to 100. It's going to look like intensity, right? So, and intensity is right up top, which I like. Let's not make it a 0 because we don't want to divide by 0. Let's start off at a default of like 20 because that's what we had there. We had 15, but let's say 20. So now we're going to come in here. We're going to go to noise U inside inside of our group, and instead of having it say noise v translate y, let's actually make this intensity, right? Times -1 though still, because we want this one to be negative. We want this one to be the same, so we're going to say just call this one intensity. There you go. So now we're controlling these numbers out here. So now I can dial this up, and you're going to see more of a bubbling sort of effect happening right here. So these are our three main ones right here: speed, intensity, and the size is important, right? And now we can really do all kinds of interesting looks with this. Again, you push anything too far, it's going to start looking fake unless you need some kind of a fake look. Right? Maybe we want it to go faster. There we go. Too much there. Yeah, so let's lower our intensity. Now remember, we can also come down here. We can change this linearity thing, smooth it out a little bit. We can change the octaves of the noise. We could affect our gamma and gain, the contrast noise. You know what I'm thinking now as I'm looking at this is I really want a way to be able to see the noise, because sometimes, you know, when I'm building a noise thing, I really like to see this, right? So I'm going to add a switch, and I'm going to, by default, spit out what we've got going on, but I'm going to give us the option here of switching over to the noise, right? So in order to do that, I need to go back into my heater group, manage user knobs. I'm going to add a checkbox, and I'm going to call it show noise, and then show noise question mark as the label. Okay, and that's just up top right there. And okay, let's go back into that switch now in the group, hit the equal sign, and just say show noise. And by default it's off, which is 0. But if we check it, so now I'm going to look through this heater node. If we check it, check this out. We're going to switch over to seeing our noise that we're working on instead of seeing our image. So this is a great way, without having to break into the group, of seeing what we're working on. Now I can really come in here and dial in sort of a look, right? And say, oh, I want a much larger size noise. I really want it to be like this big, and you know, my UV offset or my UV scale is actually not going to be visible here because I skipped that. But my gamma I can adjust my brightness sort of in contrast here by doing gamma and gain. It's gonna send a more intense channel, more intense look over there. So all these little things I can fidget with right here in this octaves thing. Let's see what happens if I lower that. Not much. Oh, look at that. If I lower the octaves, first off, it makes things faster, but it also smooths it out a little bit, which might not be such a bad thing. So now let's turn it off and see what we got going on. This is looking pretty interesting. Yep, let's see. You know, that is not bad at all. I really like that. There's just one thing I wish I could do. Maybe one or two more things I wish I could do. So why stop there? Let's keep going. I'm going to save because there's definitely something to do. Let's look at our noise and what could we do to smooth this out even more? Well, we could add a blur after it, right? Let's put a blur after everything, and let's actually take everything now from after this blur. And the default for the blur is a 0, so that doesn't mean anything. But if we start dialing it up, let's see, we're going here. See that? I'm averaging out stuff, so I'm smoothing it out. So that's going to do something, I'm sure. So let's just let's call this blur blur underscore noise. Just so we can find it better here. We're going to go back to our heater node, double click on it for me, manage user knobs, pick, blur noise, and blur, and size, and hit OK. It's going to say size, and we don't want it to say size, so I'm actually going to click here, and I'm going to go edit, and I'm going to say label. It doesn't matter what the name is, label. I'm going to call it blur, maybe even more blur, or post blur or something fancy like that. Post blur. Yeah, that sounds cool. Ooh, capital. Okay, and I'm going to move this up because this is one of those fancy settings that I created that maybe I want to have in its own section or something like that. All right, so let's take a look at what we got going on here. So here's our, let's dial up our intensity. Let's exaggerate everything a little bit. So you see this intensity is just kind of changing the separation in the amount of push and pull, if you will. Make it go a little faster. Make this X and Y size like 400, so it's a little smaller, so the noise is going to be, or I'm sorry, like this, let's say like much, maybe a little intensity side. Octaves look good. Let's see what happens there. Let's exaggerate everything just a little bit, but now let's add in this post blur and see what happens. See that? Even though I've made a smaller frequency, it's averaging everything out, so we're not getting quite the hard edges when we do smaller amounts of noise. So it's just another function that I can add to my gizmo to sort of help dial in the look that I want to go for. You don't have to have it there. It's completely up to you, but again, this is kind of another look, more of like a water ripples thing going on now. Looks pretty good to me. I guess for that look, it's not really my thing, but you know, whatever. Yeah, so there you guys go. There is a, let me turn off this post blur. I want to make this size like 500. Let's make 350. Let's just get ourselves a nice little ending look here. And let's make the UV scale a little larger. There we go. Take a look at it. And so there you guys go. And now you could do all kinds of other things. You could add a multiply in there after everything so that you just, you know, literally multiply everything in your noise times a number, which is going to make the intensity even crazier. I mean, this actually looks, I've dialed it up so much here, it almost looks like a kind of a cool reflective water surface type thing, which is another use you could use this for. So that's really cool. I've experimented with all kinds of crazy things. I've gone in and, you know, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff, and you can just keep adding switches and stuff like that to turn on and off options. One thing I was playing around with the other day was I did like an edge detect or something like that on the noise, and it created this alpha channel that looked really cool. So then I shuffled the alpha channel into I'll show you guys real quick. I'm actually Want to do it up here. This is just me riffing now. This is not. I've now gone away from my heat distortion node, but I'm playing with something else. So I've got these two really strange looking channels here. I'm gonna do. I have something called a flood. I've created these. It's just flood red, green, blue, black, white, alpha. But all it is a shuffle that's going to is take one channel and turn it into all the channels. So if I flood alpha, for me, it's just this. It's just taking everything and making an alpha. It's just faster to do it this way. So I'm going to flood alpha on both of these. Or I'll show you how to do it if you don't happen to have the flood alpha node. It's just you do a shuffle and you just check alpha. So everything becomes the alpha channel. So now after my shuffle copy, my red and green look like this. And I have no idea what this is going to look. Look at that. That's crazy looking. It's even got this really weird stuff going on here. No idea what this is going to look like. Whoa! But it's super fun, right? So let's see. Let's dial down the intensity a bunch. The XY size should probably go up a little bit. Maybe we do want to add a little bit of blur now because it's got this craziness going on. Maybe take the scale down. Let's see what it's doing. It's just another look, you know. It's just another really interesting sort of crazy vibe it's got going on here. I could do a dilate and erode. I mean, it just looks like a higher frequency water thing, blobby water thing going on right now. But again, it's really really interesting. You could do. I'll show you guys another quick technique real quick. I'm not going to keep this in this gizmo, but if you wanted to, I could add another checkbox. I could call it crazy look or something, and go crazy. And all we're going to do here, keep that checkbox there, is we're going to go into our edge detect here. I'm going to make this a flood alpha because I like the look better. We'd have to go into all of these, and you go over to here where it says disable, and you have to right click on it and go add expression and go crazy. Or what did I call it? Crazy. I can never remember what I call things. This is one of the fundamental errors of being me. I called it crazy look. All right. God forbid I name it the same thing. All right. So disable. Add expression. We actually want to go 1 minus crazy look like that, so that it's disabled by default. But if we check that box, it's going to enable it. And I would want to do this for every one of these. Let's see. Disable expression 1 minus crazy look. I want to copy that just so I don't have to type it every time. So you can see that it's with the 1 slash through it, that means it's being disabled by an expression. I had cancel. Of course I did. Disable expression. Okay. And one more time here. And I'm just really just showing this to you guys to illustrate another technique used in gizmo making. So everything's disabled. So now I have my default look, but if I check this box, go crazy. Whoa! Everything is now enabled. Do you see that? So you can quickly enable and disable things in gizmos by doing this. I'm not a big fan of this look, but you know, whatever. Because you could even go, crazier if you wanted to. You could, let's see, go crazy. Let's see, you could put like a, let's look at this. You could do an erode. You could make some kind of look. Let's do a different erode. Let's do a erode filter. Gives it smoother. Looking at the alpha channel. Again, we're going to flood alpha, but look, we're going to do some very interesting looks here. Well, I'm curious now to see what happens if I do this. Let's put it over here as well. I'm not going to worry about linking them because I'm probably not going to save this, but you know, I'm just messing around right now. Let's see. Gonna have these weird squares, that's for sure. And we are shuffle. You know what? I have to do the flood alpha after the erode. Silly me. I'm hitting Apple Shift X will extract a node from its chain, but maintain the rest of the chain. So that's kind of a important thing. So anyway, we've got this crazy looking noise thing that looks like this, and we're going to see what it is doing to our noise. It's just probably going to be just another like super crazy insanity looking noise thing. Yeah, it's just more crazy heat distortion-y looking noise. Whatever. So I'm going to delete, I'll keep the go crazy thing in there because why not, but I'm going to delete these roads for now. You know, if I needed to make a specific tool, I would sit in here and really play around with it and get my settings sort of like a preset for the artist. I'd dial it into something that looks about right from the get-go. I actually have it if I hit tab and I hit heat distort. Here's the node I created before that I'm going to fix. And because I use transforms and I realized that transforms have that problem, and I did not actually go in here and uncheck black outside. So now I'm going to do it. I'm going to redo this thing with this new technique that I showed you guys, but I put in the blur, the multiply. I did a pre-blur before before everything. It's a little bit different, but it's kind of the same thing. I have noise, but I also have a switch. I gave people the option to, right up top, I gave people the option to either use like this built-in noise or pump in their own noise if they wanted to. What's kind of cool that I didn't do in my original one that I'm going to keep now is I like this idea, this checkbox that I came up with where people can see the noise. I think that's really handy. So I actually like my newer heater node better. Of course, you got to be cool, right? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, you know, give it a color. Make it. Yep, just because it's, you know, it's hot. It's the heater. So that is my first tutorial for visualdefects.com. Probably a little long-winded. I apologize. I'm bored out here in Wilmington. Going a little stir crazy. Great food, but I'm from Los Angeles, and I wish I was back in Los Angeles with my loving wife right now. Although I'm having a great time on this show, and I'm looking forward to the next tutorial.